We've got a special episode today. We are back in the kitchen and we'll be doing a German recipe from the 18th century called cooked pastry. Thanks for joining us today. Many folks are asking us about different cultural recipes for the 18th century, Germany or Dutch recipes. Those are both asked for, and we just luckily ran into some folks at a recent conference. We were at a Living History Museum conference out in New York State. We ran into some folks from Old Salem. Karen Absher, Kayla Kavanaugh. They're working on translating a couple of German cookbooks. Cookbooks that likely would have been in the Moravian community there in North Carolina. And so they are translating some of these recipes. They gave us this cookbook. It looks like a lot of fun. So hopefully we'll be able to go there someday soon. It's such a great site. I've been there but many years in the past. So I'd love to go and visit Old Salem. Today's recipe is a cooked pastry. And you can use this in many different ways. The particular recipe we'll be using it today, well, let me just say, it's going to be really good, so let's get started. This recipe comes out of the Economical Handbook for the Housewife. It was printed in Stuttgart in 1795. This recipe for this cooked pastry is very, very similar to a modern French choux pastry, minus just a couple of tiny little changes, but it's right out of this cookbook. Really, it's very simple, but it's versatile. We can use this pastry for several different things depending on the consistency. If we make it stiff, we can use it and make sort of a puff pastry. If we use it in the way we're going to do it today, it'll be more of a batter, and we can use it for a funnel cake or for, well, what we're gonna be doing later on. Let's get started making this up. So we're gonna start off with some flour. This is just plain unbleached flour. We've got a little less than a cup here. And we are shrinking this recipe. It's probably half of what is in the book because we don't wanna make a giant tub of this stuff. But we've got a cup or so of our unbleached flour. And we're gonna be mixing this right in our cooking vessel. And now I've got just some plain regular milk. We've got a little bit more than a cup here. Again, we're making this a little bit looser, more of a batter mixture, so we have a little bit more milk than flour. The other thing about this recipe is the ratios, the ingredients, again, like most of these recipes from the 18th century, it isn't precise. Whisk this up a little bit and get this good and mixed. And now we are going to add some butter here. This is probably about 8 ounces of butter. We don't need all of this. We're gonna work with about 4 ounces of this butter, about a half of a stick that we're used to here in North America. I'm not gonna bother to whisk this up because this is gonna go on a low fire and we're gonna start heating this up, getting it up to a simmer, and it'll start to thicken. So let's get this on the fire. Well, we got the fire going already, and what's gonna happen is this is gonna start thickening up right away. This is probably already not something for a whisk. Let's go straight to a spoon and start to fold this in. As it starts to simmer, as it starts to get really warm, it should thicken right up. You wanna make sure to continue stirring the entire time. You don't want it to burn, you don't want it to stick, and you don't want it to get lumpy. So when this stuff starts to thicken up, it thickens up in a hurry. It went so fast we couldn't catch it on the camera. So watch it. You want to make sure to continue to stir it the whole time though, so you get a very, very consistent batter here, or lump as we get in the end. So this is good and really thickened up. The next stage is to actually get some eggs into these. So let me set this aside. It's gonna stay warm for us. Let me get some eggs and get them mixed up here. I've got 6 eggs in here. I'm gonna get them whisked up so that we can start to mix in here. Now we may not need all 6 of these eggs, but I wanna have enough. Our eggs are whisked up. Let me set these aside. Let's bring our dough back in here. This is gonna be a challenge. I don't wanna mix all these in. I wanna try to get to the right consistency. This is all about not precision measuring, but precision consistency, right? So we're just gonna add in about half these eggs and start going. So this is looking like a real mess, right? It looks like it's never going to mix in properly, but we just have to keep at this. This will mix in eventually. If you've got a mixer, this will actually work a lot faster, but we're just gonna keep working at this. So as you can see, it's starting to mix in here. It did not take that long. It wasn't that crazy. And we've got a nice kind of a thick batter here. If we were making this into a certain sort of pastry that we would bake in the oven, we're already gotten too thin. But for what we want, it's still a little too thick. So I'm gonna add a little bit more of our eggs. And I'm just gonna continue to stir this up until it gets silky smooth, then it'll be ready. Okay, so this smoothed right out for us. This particular pastry or cooked pastry is ready to go. Now, what are we gonna cook with it? What are we gonna do with it? We could possibly just cook it right into our hot fat, and we could make something like a funnel cake. Maybe we'd cover it up with sugar or something else. But we're gonna do something else a little more special with this that's particular to this particular recipe book. And that is, we're going to take homemade cooked bratwurst. You definitely want to make sure the bratwurst is already cooked for this particular recipe because the heat isn't going to get all the way and penetrate to it's not going to cook this bratwurst. So we've got some cooked bratwurst, and as the recipe says, we're going to slice these guys up. They're nice and long, so I'll slice them up in half and then in half again, so we have sort of 4 pieces for each one of these, and they divide up nicely. I'm just gonna toss them right into our pot. Let's take these over to the fire. Our fat is nice and hot over the fire here, hopefully not too hot. We're using just very standard old lard here. And I'm just gonna take this, and it's very well coated, you can see this, and just put them right in there. Let me try just 1 or 2 to start with. See how they go. Well, as you can see, these guys have turned out and they look wonderful. And of course, they smell wonderful, and I'm sure this bratwurst is gonna be really good. Let's give them a try. They really kind of puffed up nicely, and they really have a great look to them. Incredible, great, wonderful flavor. Of course, we've got this wonderful bratwurst in the middle. You can't go wrong. But we have this great, a complementary pastry that's cooked around it. And it's not a sweet pastry. It is a sweet, savory pastry in this circumstance. It doesn't have sugar in it or anything like that. So it really covers this, and it works really well. But I mean, if you think about it, we could do so many different things with this batter. And some of the recipes talk about these other things that we could put with it. Sometimes we just take this batter and apparently you rolled it in things. If it's a little bit thicker, you could roll it in breadcrumbs and fry it like that. Or you could roll it in, say, the boiled eggs that have been crumbled up. And I think of something like, what happens if instead of bratwurst, we took cheese and we put it and then we coated it and fried that in there. Whoa, that would be a great kind of take on this same concept. So we could even do this with fruits, and the cookbooks even mention something like elderberry, but we could probably use other kinds of fruits and sweeten this up and maybe put sprinkled sugar on top at the same time. So it's a very versatile kind of batter or dough, and you can do a lot of different things with it. And this is, hey, it's right out of the 18th century and probably quite typical of something that you would find in a German-influenced culture household right here in North America. So I really want to thank the folks at Old Salem and the fantastic translation work they're working on right now to bring some of this available to those folks that don't have all the knowledge of, understanding the 18th century German cookbooks. So it is great to have folks that are working on those kinds of things. So I really want to encourage them, thank them so much for making this kind of thing available to us so that we can interpret it and understand it and try it out. Definitely a wonderful, this is really one of those great ones. Everyone here is kind of trying to decide whether this is one of the very best ones we've ever done. So it's a great one. I really want you to try this one out. It is not terribly complicated at all, really very few ingredients. All these things are available and you can easily cook this at home. It is a great one, a good one to try out. Also, if you're in that North Carolina area, that's the Winston-Salem, North Carolina area, Old Salem, the historic site there, a tremendous site. There's a lot of great buildings and so much research, wonderful people there. So make sure to check that out if you're in that area or you're going to that area. I highly encourage you to check that out. I want to thank you so much for coming along with us today, trying out these new things, testing them out. We're experimenting. We're savoring the flavors and the aromas of the 18th century.